In today's video, this is part 2 of the Dyson DC33 refurbishment series, where we take all of these parts and put them together to resemble a vacuum cleaner once more. So sit back, relax, maybe enjoy yourselves, and we'll get this thing back together. Yes, hello, my vacuum cleaner chums. How are you today? Yes, you see before your very eyes or somebody else's every single part that comprises a Dyson DC33. And, well, over the course of this video, it's all got to go back together because it's no use to anybody sat like it is. And we shall start with the Cyclone, which will get rid of a fair few bits. So allow me to get ready, get all the bits to one side that we need, and I'll show you how to reassemble it. And we'll start with what I think is the most fiddliest part of the entire process, which is this handed, that you can see the little tongs, spring, this middle piece, and these two here. Now, it's quite simple in theory, they just snap together. However, this red bar, which forms the middle part of the bin release valve, needs to sit in there. And this spring needs to sit in such a way that it sort of pulls this bit away from where it will jam on the top of the bin if we don't. And the way that we do this is you first put the spring with the top tab hitting the back of that. Then, and this is where it gets quite difficult, you'll see a groove running down there. We need to put the spring in with its tab there like that, and then whilst keeping it twisted, push it down until eventually the red bit will sit in there. And then you've got to hold that somehow, however it helps, whilst we pop this bit on. But it gets better. If I just release that for a second, because it should sit quite nicely. This spring needs to go behind the sort of the bin release button. And luckily, the spring will stay in place once you put it in. But you then got to hold it away from... It's quite difficult to explain, really. It's easier when you sat in front of it. If you get a small flat blade screwdriver and push it back so it clears the housing, and then push it over the little nipple as it sits across. Oh, it's very fiddly, but eventually you can just push it all down. The spring will sit where it should. Click all the parts together and check that the button operates with a little spring. I've actually just realised that I was chatting rubbish saying that to put this in first. You can put that bit in now, because it doesn't actually affect it at all. But we've done it now, and there we go, it's in. It can sit there quite happily. We shall put our top bin seal on. It goes on with the V at the top. Turn this upside down, pop that over here, and stick it in its little groove. Make sure it's not twisted, and it sits nicely like so. Next, we take our brand new Cyclone gasket. They are very cheap. This one was only £3 delivered, and push it on top of the white part of the Cyclone. However, you will note that it is not fitted correctly. That's right. it is handed, so you need to fit it on whilst also lining up all the holes, and eventually one way around will do it. There it goes, I think. Nope. Hope this is the right one. It was, there you go. Flip it over. Eventually you'll get it lined up so all of the screw holes poke through, otherwise you're going to stab your new gasket and it's going to be no good to anybody. And that then sits on like so, and then we've got to put all of these screws back in, which I shall do now, and then we'll come back and carry on. With your screws in place, we can drop the top on. Now this is very faded. You'll see that side is a lot duller than that side. Unfortunately, fading is something that Dysons do a lot. They don't like being kept in sunny places. Then we take all of our short black screws and again pepper this entire top bit with them. Once our Cyclone top is in place, we can grab our top handle, and to fit it we need to slide the front in so it clips and hold the back up so it clears this screw peg here. There we go, big smack, gets that bit in. Then the top bit will line up, and then we can simply put our two screws in the top to hold it in place. With that done, we can drop our small thin spring into the little holder for it there, and then line up and push down on our red top button. You will then have to push this bit into its gap, and then eventually it'll all just start to work very well indeed. That's actually this entire top part now done. We can then take our lower cone, pop the bottom rubber seal on, just like that, and then snap it into place onto its 4 tabs, something like so. Do that last because obviously it makes it a lot more difficult to hold itself for the first bit. Pop that to one side. We'll take our bottom flap and we shall fit our bottom flap seal, which is a little bit fiddly because you have to manoeuvre it around a lot of things really. It has to sit in its groove, inside and outside of everything else. However, eventually it all snaps into place and looks rather good, like so. We then need to fit it to our bin, line up one of the little hinge tabs and simply push the other side in. It might help a little bit if you bend the Cyclone a little bit, or the bin a little bit, just to open up said tabs. Lots of scary sounding plasticky noises, but eventually you will get it all lined up. We can then pop the bin back onto the Cyclone assembly, close up our flap, check it still works, as unflap it does, and you can tell how nice and clean it is because it does what all brand new Dysons do and is a little bit stiff. And there is our Dyson DC33 Cyclone all done and ready to go on. Now for the next part, which is where we see our chassis again. And before we stick the motor in, we have to put this suction channel back into place. It just slides over and sits there nice and is done up by one screw at the back. And then we take our filter flap clip, line it up, do it on the floor so I can push down, and it will just push and clip into place very nicely, like so. But before we put the motor in, we may as well build this side up because we have a lot of access at the minute. And we start with these two pieces here. which form the changeover valve assembly, and they just slide, actually that's back to front, slide on like so. As I said in the strip down, the two big clips go at the back, the two smaller clips go at the front, and it's a slightly fiddly affair of lining the back up first so it sits flush, as flush as I can show you with the back there, and then push down on here whilst pushing this into position. In fact, once that's in position, we can fit the seal there that seals the blockage release valve to the chassis. Then we shall take the lock, fit its spring back on like so, and then holding it in this position with the top part above the spring, push the tabs in, push the spring down out of the way, and push it in until it slides home and starts to lock. This will then mean that this is locked into place until you push on that button, which is what the cleaner head does, and it's all released. Then we'll take this seal and push it onto the rearmost of the two holes. This is where this part seals up against when the machine's back together, and it's a little bit fiddly, as all Dyson work is, but work your way around and eventually it'll push on rather nicely like so. Then we'll take the seal for the bottom of this part, the bit that runs up and down the changeover valve, and pop it on. It's very simple because it's all handed. That side has two little clips and that side has one. Does also only go in one way as well. If we hold it here, like if I put it in the wrong way, the right way it goes in. If you then put it in the wrong way, oh, fiddly, it sits on the top. These two the wider side goes out like so, and that means that you can hold it in the right position and push this part in until the clips locate. It does have a bounce, it has to have a bounce, and that then clips onto there like so, and the changeover valve mechanism is complete. Right, time for the motor. We need to put our rubber seal back over the fan case, and then you have to put the rubber seal on so the top lip goes over the lip of the motor all the way around, otherwise it will never fit and you will have a terrible time really. And once you've worked your way around, we do need to fit this part. However, you'll notice that the little cutouts are different sizes. Yes, that means that we have to line things up. So we shall take our motor holder, and you want to have the motor fitted so the cable wraps nicely around and then vanishes off into the little cable hole here. So we actually start by feeding the cable through to get the slack out of the way, and then roughly holding it over so we can work out where our motor rubber needs to go. You can push the rubber on, locating the two pegs into their holes. Then we take our bubble solution. Don't need that, we want to get a nice wet finger and lubricate the inside of the bucket. Why do I use bubble solution? Well, you can use other stuff, grease, WD-40, etc., but you've got to be careful that you don't use anything too smelly. And also, bubble solution dries fairly innocently. If you use grease, which I have here but I'm not using, when it dries it will literally glue the motor in, so if you ever got to have it back out again, you're going to have a hard time. I use bubble solution. You can use water. All you want to do is make this rubber seal not stick to the motor housing really, because you're going to want to manipulate it a little bit. And eventually eyeing it up and making sure that the cable isn't trapped. you want to push it in until the rubber sits flush on there. Then we've trapped our cable grommet a little bit. I'm hoping that, there we go, we can pull that through. So that sits there nicely. Then on this side we take the snap-on cover. Notice that that ends there, that bit goes on there. Line it up and push it home. Now the DC33 is the only Dyson that has these stupid cable holders on the back of the motor bucket. So to start with, take your cable and feed it through the top hole in the chassis, like so. Then, well, actually we are missing quite an important part, the cover, which simply pushes over like so, making sure that you're in the inside of the two little grooves on the side of the motor, and you're inside there nicely, because if it's half in half out it's never going to go in. And then sort of push the cable in. I don't really ever put it back in those clips, it just sits there quite nicely. Manipulate the motor around until the housing sits nice and flush, and then whilst keeping it nice and flush, and again this part can be a little bit tricky, start to just put one of the screws in to hold it in place so you can let the thing go. Got one in the front. Oh, we'll turn it over, we'll do this back one. And you'll start to see it pull everything nice and in, and then you know it's in place, and then we can go and put the other two screws in where they go. At this juncture, to check that we have the cable fitted correctly in the motor bucket, feed the spinal wire into where it needs to go, and then push it in the clips that are just located up here. I use my screwdriver to push them in. It's nice and blunt, it's not going to damage the cable at all. So just a couple of clips. And then on the other side, check that the cable fits in there nicely, because obviously now is the easier time to just quickly tweak the position or the amount of slack that's sat behind here. But that is lovely, that just sits in there nicely. That's all we need to do there. The next thing I'm going to do is fit the diffuser to here, which clips on. And then the shortest silver screw that we have, oh, that's not even clipped on, there we go. Just screws it into place very nicely indeed. Next we can fit the pre-motor filter, or more importantly the suction release valve. If I can find, there it is, the three parts that it needs. This first bit drops in, then this spring goes on top, then put the retaining clip down and click all four little tabs into place. We can take our washed original pre-motor filter, stick it in and snap it into place like so. Next thing we want to do is the post motor filter, which on a DC33 is needlessly complicated, I must say, because it's all screwed on with this, and this is a bit of a pain to fit. There is a little triangular end piece that lines up here, and then the other bit snaps over the other side there. I'm not quite sure why they did this. It is very complicated. It's all handed, but it's not too difficult to get in. It's more difficult to get it out, I have to say. That snaps in there. The last of the black screws goes in here, which brings it all together very nicely indeed. We can then actually take our post motor films. So I've opted for a replacement pad. They're very cheap. Obviously you can get a HEPA one again if you want. And that can sit on there. So actually all filtered up now, but obviously we can't do any vacuuming as we sit. We haven't got any wheels to start with. So we'll get our axle, which obviously has its circlip on the end still, and a wheel. But actually then, little smear of grease all around where the wheel will run, and this will stop the wheel from like squeaking and squealing as it all gets a bit dry. Then we want our first washer. Then we'll push this all through here like so. Then we take our second washer, another little tiny finger of grease. You don't want a lot, just enough for it to not run dry. Put our second wheel on, then take our circlip, sit it on its little groove. If you sit it pointing downwards, it won't fall off, although you don't want to be sat at this angle. Then just take a pair of pliers and push it on. That'll hold itself on there very nicely. Then we can fit the glamour caps to the wheels, and it'll actually now stand up because it's got the two rear wheels on it. We can now fit our polished up, cleaned up cleaner head. Make sure that the changeover valve is in the up position. Hold, bend those out and manipulate it onto the machine. And you'll know you've done it because it will start to work very nicely. Everything clicks together like so. Then we can fit our two cleaner head retaining circlips. They just snap on either side like so. Now comes the ever so slightly difficult part, our freshly belted clutch. This is actually a different clutch because if you remember, the white wheel is trash on this one. You can buy replacement white wheels. Be honest, you may as well just buy yourself another clutch. Although they're getting quite expensive, so you might have to do a rebuild. I have a couple of spare clutches, so I didn't need to do that. And the way to do this is, it is quite fiddly, I cannot lie. Put the belt, and again you try and do this without putting a big twist in the belt, over the motor spindle. You can barely get two fingers in there, it's very difficult. But eventually you will get it on without a twist, as I have just done. No twist. There we go. And then the clutch will then push down into where it needs to go, and then give the belt a good spin just to check it sits nicely on the motor spindle like so. Then we can take our clutch cover, pop the belt guard bit in, and then be careful not to trap the other belt. Push it as home as it will go, and just put one screw in the middle, which will pull it all square, because it will go down further. Put the back screw in, which can be quite a sod, especially if you drop it, because it's very dark in here. It will just fall out the bottom now, so it's not completely the end of the world. And then our last clutch screw goes there. Now we need to take our upper brushroll housing and our washed and now springy again internal hose, screw the cap that pops it onto the machine onto one end, like so. Then screw the other end onto the upper brushroll housing. It'll stop there because it will then hit that part. Then pop the hose onto the only one it can pop onto. Then push the housing back into the cleaner head. Oh, there we go. You should have a bit of a bounce going on, but if you haven't got enough of a bounce, because this is what keeps the machine, this is the automatic floating head part, that bounce, that's why that hose is a bit critical. Now the next thing to do, I shall pop that slightly to one side, is to rebuild our brush roll with our two bearings, our two end caps and our axle. Pop one of the bearings on. If your bearings are stiff, you can pop those black caps off and put some grease in it. Ours are fine. Put one of the end caps on, push the axle all the way into the end cap, slide it into the brush roll, and put the other bearing on, put the other end cap on, make sure that both end caps are facing the same way, and now it is time to lift our belt. You probably can do this without this tool. I have been told by other collectors that it is possible. However, I have the tool. The tool is very cheap. And the belts are so stiff when they are new that I just don't think there's any other way around it. However, do keep your face away from it. I have properly hard smacked myself in the face with this a few times. I know there's many people out there that would like to smack me properly hard in the face, but it's not nice. I'll show you why it's slightly worse. I'm going to have to come off to a different angle because you need to be at the right angle to get the pull. Because you can then just drop the brush roll through that nice gap, stick it roughly into place, and then after all that effort, you flick the belt off, like so, give it a good couple of spins to centre up the belt onto the brush roll. And that part is done. We'll put our pointless, stupid gap filler piece in there. We've then got these two seals, which actually, one goes on the brush roll, the other one, this really thin one, just goes around here. I think it's only just because to provide a little bit of extra seal for where the suction comes. This other one drops into the front. Like that, doesn't really matter how it goes in, it all gets pushed up when it goes on. The next thing we'll do is fit our front wheels. If these are worn, a pack is ever so cheap. Just search for Dyson sole plate wheels. You just want to stick a little smear of grease on them, because again, these can squeal something horrible when they are dry, and they just snap into place like so. Do all of the rest. Then take our edge cleaning bristles, slide them back in. You might want to just push them in with the help of a big screwdriver, just so you don't pierce your skin, because the ends are quite sharp on them. There we go. Then just fit the base plate back to the cleaner as normal and do up the 3 locking tabs. While we're at this angle, we'll pop the clip back onto our elbow, and it only goes on one way, like that, and then that will simply clip into place like so. And that's actually the entire bottom end of our Dyson DC33 done. Do not fit this yet though, because if there's a problem with the clutch or the motor, you know, we haven't plugged the wires back in or whatever, we've got to snap this back off again, and that is a pain. So I always leave that until the very end. All I've got to do now is just to tip you up and hello. So I'm looking at my telly so I can check that I've got everything in shot. We can fit our 2 rubber seals. One pushes onto here. Oof, it's an awful angle for you to do, even I can't see what I'm doing. Because it pushes in first, it goes in that side first, and then you can just sort of manipulate the rest around. And there is another one here, and that goes on the other side exactly the same, pushes over the locator, and then you come round to the other side and just, oh my goodness me. It's a good job I don't pretend to be a professional, isn't it? Random bloke fixes Dyson is my motto, really. Nothing more, nothing less here. Wow. Even I'm embarrassed by this. There we go. So it's easy when you're not trying to show badly on camera how to do it, really. There's a little rubber seal. That's it, you're on. For those. Then, since we're here, we may as well fit our upholstery tool. Put the brush part back on our crevice tool. And fit that. Then we're ready for the wiring. To wire up a DC33 is, well, it's exactly the same as I'm wiring it, really. Put the cable grommet in first, in that part. Then push the cable all the way into where it needs to go. It might need a little bit of help, because it does need to be pushed quite far in at the back, because the housing is, its position is critical, relevant to then this pushes on it even more. Take our neutral cover and plug the neutral wires together and then cover them. Bring the live wire through there. See the little cable run that it needs to go in. The neutral wire has to have the same, but then it pushes in like so. Take our switch, plug the 2 live wires into it, plug the switch in, stick it in place like so, and then manipulate on this switch housing, really. It should just push in once everything's lined up very, very easily. Unlike DC07 and 14, it doesn't rely on messing around with clips and stuff. And then put the 4 screws back into their holes. Then just check that the switch operates. That is a little bit stiff, actually. Let's just back off these top 2 screws ever so slightly, just by a quarter of a, there we go, quarter of a thread, look. Then we take our hose, fit it to the machine, like so, then fit the other end to the wand until it clicks and locks. Then fit the wand to the machine, one button, push on the button to, come on, oh you're up there aren't you, lower the wand back in, like so. Then we take the last new part for this machine, which should be a new wand cap. Stick it on like so. That's a pretty poor fitment, but hey, it is a one cap nonetheless. Then bring you back down, fit the Cyclone, and we are ready to plug it in and test. So we'll take the cable. Now we're going to test a few things here. We tested the motor runs, and we'll turn it on. We have a working motor. We have excellent suction. And we have a fully working brush roll, so we can now snap our clutch cap back on. And that, folks, is that how to fully assemble, and if you watch part 1, disassemble a Dyson DC33. Hopefully you have found this helpful. Hopefully, because with this video you could do the motor, you could do that annoying little clip, you could do the switch, you could do your Cyclone gasket, you could do everything with this video. Hopefully you have done something. So there we go, stay tuned, or you might have already seen it. I don't know how I'm going to work this yet, because there was a before and after video of this in the normal Beko 1987 way. This stripped down and refurbished is a little added extra, so you're probably hunting around on my channel if you're subscribed, and it's already been out, so you would have seen it. But this is now reset to absolutely brand new, ready for another decade of hard use with somebody else. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and I, although not this Dyson DC33, will see you soon. Bye bye.